There's a moment in a long marriage that doesn't make any noise. No fight, no dramatic conversation, no final straw. It's quieter than that. It shows up on an average day in the middle of something small, folding laundry, driving home from work, or washing a plate at the sink. A woman looks over at her life, at her husband, at the routine she's been living in for years, and something in her chest feels different, not broken, just off. She can't explain it, and she usually doesn't try, because it isn't one big thing she can point to. It's 100 tiny moments that never got talked about. 100 times she swallowed her disappointment because it didn't seem worth starting a conversation over. 100 times she told herself, it's fine, this is just marriage, even though it didn't feel fine. Most men never notice this shift when it starts. Why would they? Nothing looks different. Life keeps moving the way it always has. She still gets up, still takes care of the house or the kids or her job, still smiles when she's supposed to. But inside, something is slowly drifting out of place. Something she can't quite name. It's not hate. Not yet. It's more like a quiet loss of hope. She starts seeing her husband the way you see a familiar piece of furniture, something that's always been there, something you walk past without thinking. And that's the part nobody tells you. Indifference doesn't come with warning signs. It sneaks in. It settles. It becomes normal. And for a woman in her 40s, this shift hits harder than it would have in her 20s or 30s, because by 40, she's lived long enough to know what she feels and what she doesn't. She can't lie to herself the way she used to. She can't pretend that the emotional emptiness is just a phase. She knows the difference between a rough patch and a turning point. She feels it in small ways first. She stops bringing up things that bother her because she already knows how the conversation will go. She stops expecting him to notice when she's tired or overwhelmed. She stops hoping he'll show a little curiosity about her inner world. And eventually she stops trying to be understood at all. That's the moment most men miss. They notice the distance only after it's grown too wide. They see the coldness only after it's settled in for months. They feel the resentment only when it's already matured into something sharper. But the beginning? The true beginning? It's silent. It happens inside her long before it becomes visible to him. And that small internal shift, the one she doesn't talk about, is the seed of everything that comes later. There comes a point in a long marriage where routine stops feeling comforting and starts feeling heavy. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, the way a room gets darker as the sun goes down. You don't notice it until you suddenly realize you're sitting in the dark. For a woman in her 40s, that darkness hits different. She's lived enough life to know the difference between stability and stagnation. And somewhere along the line, the life she built, the same life she once dreamed about, starts to feel like something she's just surviving. She wakes up, goes through the same motions, hears the same conversations, deals with the same patterns from her husband. Not because he's a bad man, but because time has a way of making people comfortable to the point of emotional sleep. He stops paying attention. He stops asking questions. He stops noticing the little shifts in her mood or her energy. And after a while, she feels like she's living in a loop she didn't sign up for. Routine becomes a cage when it stops evolving, when there's nothing new, nothing meaningful, nothing alive. She looks at her husband and sees a man who hasn't changed in years, not emotionally, not intellectually, not in the way he shows up for her. He's the same, exactly the same. And what used to feel reliable now feels suffocating. People like to say women become bored easily. That's not it. What actually happens is this. She stops feeling emotionally stimulated. She stops feeling like a person who's growing. She stops feeling like her marriage is a place where life still happens. Meanwhile, her husband thinks everything is fine because nothing exploded. No big fight, no dramatic confrontation. But she's not looking for explosions. She's looking for signs of life, something that says, we're still in this. We're still choosing each other. When she doesn't see those signs, resentment starts to grow. Quietly at first, then steadily. She watches other people evolve, co-workers, friends, even strangers online. She sees people reinvent their lives, try new things, rediscover themselves. And she wonders why she feels stuck in the same emotional routine she's been living for years. That's when she starts imagining other possibilities. Not cheating, not running away, just imagining what it would feel like to be seen again, to feel alive again. to be around someone who shows energy instead of comfort, curiosity instead of autopilot. And that's the dangerous part. Not because younger men are inherently tempting, but because the contrast between them and her husband becomes impossible to ignore. Her husband thinks routine means security. For her, routine has become a slow, steady reminder that she's aging inside a life that stopped moving a long time ago, and she can feel the walls closing in. There's a point where a woman looks at her own reflection and realizes she doesn't recognize the person staring back at her, not because of wrinkles or age or any of the things people joke about. It's deeper than that. It's the feeling that somewhere along the way, she slowly faded into the background of her own life. Most men don't see this happening, not because they don't care, but because they've gotten used to her being the steady one, the one who holds everything together, the one who adjusts, the one who bends so the relationship doesn't break, and for years she does it willingly. She steps up, she sacrifices, she handles the little details nobody else keeps track of. But there's a cost to that, and the cost is usually her. She wakes up one day and realizes she's spent most of her adult life taking care of everyone but herself. Kids, work, home, family, her husband's moods, his habits, his comfort. She's spent years managing everything around her, and almost no one has been managing her emotional world in return. That weariness doesn't show up in dramatic moments. It shows up in small cracks. She stops buying clothes she actually likes because she's so used to prioritizing everyone else. She stops talking about her dreams because they feel unrealistic next to the responsibilities she carries. She stops expressing certain parts of her personality because they've been ignored or dismissed for so long that it feels pointless to bring them up again. And what hurts her the most isn't the sacrifices. It's that her husband barely notices them. He doesn't see the things she lets go of. He doesn't see the parts of her she had to put away to him. She's just the same woman she's always been. But she's not. Not even close. The version of herself she misses is the one who felt vibrant, the one who had opinions that mattered, the one who felt desired, not out of habit, but out of genuine admiration, the one who believed she had options, emotional, personal, sexual, everything. By the time she hits her 40s, that loss hits her hard, because she realizes time isn't endless anymore. She realizes she's not in her one day I'll years. She's in the if I don't change something now, I never will years. That's when resentment toward her husband begins to deepen. Not because he ruined her life, not because he's a villain, but because he never really saw her slipping away. He saw the responsibilities she handled, not the woman carrying them. He saw the stability she brought, not the exhaustion beneath it. He saw the routines she maintained, not the identity she lost keeping them alive, and so when she suddenly notices a younger man giving her attention, real attention, it hits her in a place she thought was gone. Not because he's younger, but because for the first time in years she feels like a woman again instead of a role she's been filling. This isn't about lust, it's about identity. It's about the part of herself she's been mourning quietly for years. And the truth she rarely says out loud is this: she isn't chasing a younger man. She's chasing the version of herself she lost somewhere along the way. There's a moment in a marriage when the emotional distance stops being something she tolerates and becomes something she can't ignore anymore. It's not dramatic. It's not a fight. It's usually something small, like sitting next to her husband on the couch and feeling nothing. Not anger, not love, just space. She remembers how they used to talk without checking their phones, how they used to laugh without forcing it, how they used to touch each other like it meant something. But somewhere along the years those things faded, and she kept telling herself it was normal. All marriages cool down. Life gets busy. This is what happens. She believed every excuse except the one that mattered. They stopped reaching for each other. For a while she tried to bridge the gap. She brought up things that bothered her, but the conversations never went anywhere. He'd get defensive, or he'd shrug, or he'd promise to do better for a week, and then slide back into the same habits. And after enough of those cycles, she stopped trying. That's what most men don't understand. Women don't emotionally check out suddenly. It happens after years of feeling like they're talking to a wall. And when a woman stops trying, she doesn't announce it. She just quietly shuts the door inside herself. She becomes polite. She becomes functional. She becomes someone you can live with easily because she no longer asks for anything. But that emotional distance isn't neutral. It builds resentment. She starts noticing things she used to overlook. The way he doesn't listen, the way he zones out, the way he treats her as familiar instead of cherished. She notices how he only becomes affectionate when he wants something, not because he's actually tuned into her. She notices how she can tell him she's tired, overwhelmed, or hurt, and he'll nod like he heard her, but nothing changes. And the truth is this: nothing destroys attraction faster than emotional indifference. A younger man doesn't suddenly look appealing because he has abs or energy or optimism. It's because he reacts to her. He pays attention. He notices things her husband stopped noticing years ago. She feels the difference instantly. She feels it in the way the younger man listens with curiosity instead of obligation. She feels it in how he responds, not out of habit, but out of genuine interest. She feels it in the way he sees her, and not the wife, not the mother, not the manager of the household, but the woman. Once that contrast hits her, she can't unsee it. She can't go back to pretending she's satisfied with someone who's emotionally clocked out. She can't pretend the gap isn't there. And something shifts inside her. She starts asking herself why her husband doesn't show the same energy this younger person does. Why he stopped trying. Why he stopped being curious about her. Why he's become a partner she has to emotionally carry instead of someone who meets her halfway. That question, why doesn't he see me anymore, hits her deeper than anything else. And once a woman starts asking herself that, her whole view of the marriage begins to change. Not because she wants a younger man, but because she's finally admitting how lonely she's been right next to the person she promised her life to. Hitting 40 does something to a person. It's not the number, it's the mirror it forces you to look into. The one that shows you your life exactly as it is, not as you hoped it would become. For a woman, that mirror can feel brutal. Not because she sees aging, but because she sees time. Time she can't get back. Time she spent holding everything together. Time she spent being understanding, patient, flexible. Time she spent waiting for her husband to meet her where she was, but he never really did. She starts looking at her life differently. She notices the routines that once felt stable now feel like dead weight. She notices the quiet in the house, and instead of peace, she feels emptiness. She notices how long it's been since her husband looked at her with real interest, not just familiarity. This doesn't come from insecurity. If anything, women in their 40s often feel clearer and more grounded than ever. They know their strengths. They know what they bring to the table. They know who they are. What scares them isn't aging. It's realizing they've outgrown the emotional version of the marriage they're in. The midlife mirror makes her ask questions she avoided for years. Is this all there is? Is this who we became? Is this the kind of relationship I want to spend the rest of my life in? Do I even feel alive anymore? These questions sting because they feel like the beginning of a truth she's tried to ignore. She never planned to resent her husband. She never planned to drift away. She never planned to feel more connection with someone who barely knows her than the man she's shared a bed with for decades. And yet, that's where she's finding herself. The midlife mirror shows her something else too. She has fewer years ahead than behind. Not in a dramatic sense, just in a real, human way, and she starts measuring her life differently. Not by responsibility, but by meaning. Not by routine, but by emotional reality. She starts paying attention to how she feels around people. Around her husband, she often feels invisible. Around a younger man, or just someone who gives her genuine attention, she feels present, awake, wanted. It isn't about the younger man himself, it's about the reminder he represents. Life isn't over. You're still someone worth noticing. You're not done growing. And that reminder hits hard, because somewhere deep down, she's terrified of wasting the rest of her life feeling numb. That's the truth nobody admits. Women at 40 aren't running from age. They're running from a life that stopped making them feel alive. And once she sees that in the mirror, she can't unsee it. Not in herself, and not in her marriage. People like to joke that women in their 40s suddenly want younger men because of looks or energy. That's not what's happening. What she's really craving is a younger version of herself. The part that felt alive, spontaneous, curious, open. Somewhere along the years, she stopped feeling that way. Life became predictable. Responsibilities piled up. Her marriage settled into a rhythm that felt more like maintenance than connection. and she realized she couldn't remember the last time she felt genuinely excited about anything, let alone anyone. So when a younger man gives her attention, or even when she just imagines what that kind of attention would feel like, that it hits her deeper than she expected. Not because he's young, but because she remembers who she used to be when she was seen that way. Younger energy reminds her of something she lost. The spark, the confidence, the sense that life still has new chapters instead of recycled ones. Her husband doesn't usually get this. He thinks wanting excitement means something's wrong with her. But the truth is simpler. She wants to feel awake again. She wants to feel like her life isn't stuck in the same emotional script she's been reading for decades. And here's the part men rarely understand. She doesn't want to trade her husband for a younger guy. That's not the fantasy. The fantasy is feeling emotionally alive again inside the relationship she already has. What draws her in isn't youth itself. It's attention, interest, curiosity. It's the way a younger man looks at her like she's someone worth knowing, not just someone he's gotten used to. It's the way he reacts to her words instead of nodding out of habit. It's the way he brings out a version of her she hasn't felt in years, the one who laughs easily, speaks freely, and feels seen. She doesn't chase youth because she wants to be 25 again. She chases youth because she wants to stop feeling emotionally old. That hunger isn't about replacing her husband. It's about replacing the numbness she's been living with. And once she feels even a hint of that spark returning, even just in her imagination, she can't help but question why her marriage stopped giving it to her in the first place. When people talk about women in their 40s, noticing younger men, they make it sound shallow. They act like it's about looks or novelty. But that's not what actually hits her. What hits her is the emotional contrast. A younger man shows a kind of presence she hasn't felt in years. He listens without drifting. He reacts without shutting down. He asks questions because he's actually curious, not because he's going through the motions. He doesn't see her as predictable. He doesn't treat her like a routine. He sees layers in her that her husband hasn't acknowledged in a long time. And that difference, that sense of being seen with fresh eyes, wakes something up inside her. It's not that younger men are better partners, it's that they haven't gone numb to her. They haven't built years of resentment or habits or emotional shortcuts. They look at her and truly see her as someone interesting, attractive, worth engaging with. She feels that instantly, not in a dramatic way, but in small moments. The way he pays attention when she talks, the way he lights up around her, the way he brings energy into the room instead of draining it, the way he treats her like a woman, not a background character in her own marriage. It's flattering, sure, but it goes deeper than that. It reminds her of what emotional connection is supposed to feel like. It reminds her that conversation can be natural, not forced. It reminds her that being around someone can actually feel energizing instead of heavy. And once she feels that difference, even briefly, her husband's emotional absence hits her harder than ever, because now she knows how it feels to be genuinely noticed again. Now she remembers what warmth feels like. Now she realizes the problem isn't her age, it's the emotional deadness she's been living with. The younger man becomes a symbol, not a solution. A symbol of the part of her life that still feels alive. A symbol of the connection she misses. A symbol of the version of herself she hasn't felt in a long time. And the painful truth is this: the more alive she feels in that attention, the more resentful she becomes toward the man who stopped giving it to her. And not because she wants someone younger, but because she finally remembers what it feels like to be truly seen, and she can't pretend she's fine without it anymore. Bitterness doesn't show up suddenly. It builds in small moments. The times he didn't listen, the times he brushed her off, the times he acted like her feelings were an inconvenience instead of a signal something was wrong. By her 40s, those moments add up. She looks at her husband and doesn't just see the man she married. She sees every version of him that disappointed her, every conversation that went nowhere, every year he stopped trying while expecting her to keep the peace. So when she feels a spark from someone younger, or anyone who pays genuine attention, it highlights everything her husband stopped doing. And that comparison cuts deep. She starts resenting how predictable he is, how little effort he puts in, how he thinks showing up physically is the same as showing up emotionally. The bitterness isn't about wanting out. It's about realizing he let the relationship slide into the background while she kept fighting to keep it alive. That anger isn't sudden. It's accumulated. It's earned. And once it settles in, it changes the way she sees him. Not as a partner she's grown with, but as someone she's grown away from. The breaking point in a long marriage rarely looks dramatic from the outside. There's no big fight, no slammed doors, no final ultimatum. It's quieter than that. It's her shutting down. After years of feeling unheard, she stops bringing up problems. After years of feeling dismissed, she stops explaining herself. After years of trying to fix things alone, she stops trying at all. To her husband, it looks like calm. To her, it's collapse. All the little hurts she brushed aside finally stack too high to ignore. She starts pulling back, not because she wants to punish him, but because she doesn't have any effort left to give. She becomes distant, careful with her words, emotionally guarded. Not angry, just done. And that's the moment most men mistake for moodiness or stress, when really it's the final stage of disappointment. By the time she reaches this point, she's already been grieving the relationship quietly for years. She's not boiling over. She's burning out. Under everything she's feeling, the resentment, the boredom, the distance, there's a fear she rarely admits, even to herself. It creeps in late at night when the house is quiet and she finally has to face her own thoughts. It's the fear that she wasted her best years on a relationship that stopped feeding her a long time ago. The fear that she settled into a version of life that doesn't reflect who she is anymore. The fear that the rest of her story will look exactly like the last 10 years. Numb, predictable, disconnected. And there's another fear too, the one she really keeps hidden. The fear of becoming invisible. Not to strangers, to the man who once couldn't take his eyes off her. When a younger man gives her attention, or even when she just imagines what that attention would feel like, it doesn't just make her feel desired. It makes her feel relevant. It reminds her she's still someone worth noticing, worth leaning in for, worth listening to. That's the part that hits her hardest, because she realizes how long it's been since her husband made her feel that way. This isn't about midlife crisis or chasing youth. It's about the panic that she'll stay in a marriage where she slowly disappears, where she becomes someone who cooks and cleans and organizes and maintains, but never feels emotionally alive. And when that fear shows up, everything inside her shifts. She stops thinking about what she owes to the past and starts thinking about what she still wants from the future. She's not trying to replace her husband. She's trying to save the parts of herself she's afraid she'll lose forever if she stays the same. And once that fear takes root, she can't ignore it, no matter how much she tries.